last few days of May, the Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, and we're wrapping up our series with Tom Sinas from Sinas James Law Firm talking about motorcycle liability claims. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for asking. So talk a little bit first about the difference between no fault and liability claims. What's the difference between?
Great place to start, because last week we talked about motorcyclists' no-fault claims, and it is a very different concept than a liability claim. No-fault benefits, as we've talked about in the past, are those benefits that victims of an auto accident can receive regardless of fault, and they consist, most importantly, of a insurance benefit that covers medical expenses, lost wages, and some household chore replacement. Those are no-fault benefits. It does not matter who is at fault. A liability claim is completely different. A liability claim is one that the victim of a crash can pursue against the person whose carelessness caused the crash. And in a liability claim, the victim is claiming a different form of loss than they're claiming in their auto no-fault benefits. So in short, different types of claims, different types of benefits, and different types of standards that the victim has to prove for no-fault benefits versus liability.
Well, you just said a key word there, Tom, what they can prove. What does a motorcyclist have to prove in these claims?
So if a motorcyclist is involved in an automobile accident, meaning they're struck by another car or there's a crash as a result of another car, the first thing the motorcyclist has to prove is a concept common to all personal injury cases. And the law calls that negligence. Most people would just think of that as carelessness or being unsafe. So that is the requirement of the injured motorcyclist. And that would be true, by the way, if the motorcyclist was, say, pursuing a liability claim against another motorcyclist. The idea of negligence is one that applies across the board, and that would be incumbent upon the motorcyclist to prove that the driver was negligent. And commonly we look to our motor vehicle code for the kinds of things that are permitted and not permitted on the road. But there's another requirement that a motorcyclist has to prove to pursue a claim against a motorist, against someone who is driving a car. And that is what we call the threshold injury rule. And Todd, you and I have talked about this in the past in other segments. It's the idea that victims of car crashes can only pursue liability claims if they've sustained a specific kind of injury. We call these threshold injuries, and there are three general kinds: death, permanent serious disfigurement, and the most common one, serious impairment of body function. In order for a motorcyclist to recover what we commonly call quality of life claim damages against a motorist, the motorcyclist has to prove the existence of one of those threshold injuries.
What about the recent changes to the insurance law in Michigan? Obviously, the no fault has been in and out of committees, a lot of changes, tweaks. What about that?
Okay, this is really important because it comes back to the fundamental change of this no fault reform law. And the fundamental change was that now not everyone has no fault benefits that cover their medical expenses for life. It's now no longer true. And it comes back to a concept that we talked about also last week about where motorcyclists receive their no-fault benefits. So let me use an example that I think will illustrate it better than general words. Suppose you and I are involved in a crash. I'm on a motorcycle, you're driving your car. Suppose also that you chose no-fault coverage that was less than unlimited. Let's say you chose $250,000 in that medical expense coverage. When we're involved in that crash, the law requires that me, the motorcyclist, go to your insurance policy as you, the motorist, to receive my no-fault benefits. The problem for me, the motorcyclist, is that you, the motorist, have chosen only $250,000 in medical expense coverage. So if I, the motorcyclist, have medical expenses that exceed that $250,000 in medical expense coverage, me, the motorcyclist, can pursue those excess medical bills in a liability claim against you, the motorist. So this change in the law poses not only a significant change and threat for motorcyclists, but it also poses a new and increased liability for motorists who choose less than unlimited. And that really is the fundamental change of this no-fault reform law. And you can see by way of this example that it affects both people who would be involved in that hypothetical crash.
Not only affects them, but affects them greatly. When it comes to all of what you're talking about, safety just has to be paramount, right? I mean, we just have to make sure that we're looking for these motorcycles on the road.
That's right. And it's a great way to end this Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month campaign, is that we wouldn't have to talk about any of these things if everybody was driving safe. We don't want to see these crashes. We don't want to have to delve into these issues. So that's a great place for us to end this segment.
Absolutely. Stay safe on the roads out there. If someone is in one of those accidents or just needs more information, where can they go?
They can find us online at www.sinusdramus.com. Shoot us an email at info@sinusdramus.com, or give us a call at 616-301-3333.